You wake up thinking it's just another Tuesday. Nothing feels out of place, not at first. The sun stretches in through the curtains exactly how it did yesterday, the coffee machine sputters its familiar cough, and your phone lights up with forgettable notifications. But then, something tiny, so tiny it almost escapes you, changes the air. Maybe it's the absence of a sound that should be there. A call that doesn't come. A text that's hours late. Or maybe it's just the way the silence sits. It presses on your skin like humidity. Heavier than it should be. You glance out the window and the sky looks too still, like a paused movie. And here's where the weird thing starts. Time, for you, doesn't move the same way anymore. It hasn't stopped, exactly. It's just, side-eyed you. Shifted direction. You feel yourself stuck in the moment, like a mouse under a glass, watching everything move on while your feet stay frozen to the floor. This is the moment you realize something ended quietly, without asking your permission. Nobody tells you this. Most endings don't come with violins or thunderclaps. They slip in sideways, wearing yesterday's clothes. Like that time Napoleon Bonaparte lost at Waterloo, not in a blaze of glory, but from exhaustion, muddy fields, and a string of small, forgettable errors. A man who once held half of Europe stumbled into defeat because he underestimated boredom and mud. You think about that as you sip your coffee slower than usual. There's no declaration, no collapse. Just a creeping awareness that the person you were waiting for isn't coming back. That the later you were depending on may not exist anymore. Mortality doesn't shout, it nods. A silent nod, like a knowing barista handing over a drink with your name slightly misspelled. And here's the twist, you believed you had time. We all do. You believed endings come after closure, after speeches, and goodbyes and dramatic music. But most don't. Most endings are quiet. They're a half-finished sentence. A voicemail that goes unanswered. A dream you can't remember once you wake up. You might start to ask yourself an ancient question: if something ends without anyone noticing, did it ever really exist? That's a philosophical rabbit hole older than Plato and still unanswered. Like Schrödinger's cat, but for grief. Can you mourn something that never got a goodbye? And even if you could go back, would you do it differently? Or would the same slow unraveling still take you here? It's funny we study history to avoid repeating it, yet we ignore our own patterns, like skipping the manual on a brand new espresso machine and wondering why it leaks. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. And comment your location and local time. I'd love to know where in the world you're watching from. Now, relax, you can put on some soft music and let's start the journey together right now. You walk into the living room. Everything is where you left it. The coffee cup, now half cold. The blanket folded like it always is. But it feels like someone pressed mute on your entire life. The television plays, but it doesn't speak. The refrigerator hums, but it doesn't comfort. You sit on the edge of the couch, not really knowing why you chose that spot, and suddenly the air feels wider than it used to. The walls stretch with memory. There's a coat still hanging by the door that doesn't belong to you anymore. You touch it, maybe absent-mindedly, maybe on purpose. And in that moment, the house becomes a museum of presence. Rooms echo with the sound of things no longer happening. The funny part is, nobody tells you how loud absence can be. It creaks more than footsteps. It breathes heavier than company. And just like that, you start noticing how many things were shared. Inside jokes still pinned to the fridge. A dent on the wooden floor from that time someone dropped a speaker during a dance party. You laugh, just a little, and then hate yourself for it. Or maybe not hate, maybe just feel guilty for having joy in a place that's now mostly memory. You suddenly remember reading that during the 1918 flu pandemic, families would keep windows cracked open even in winter, believing fresh air could stop death. People were desperate to keep something invisible from swallowing their homes. Isn't that what you're doing now? Trying to let in some air, hoping it pushes out the sadness? Here's a curious thing, you find yourself holding your breath. Why? As if being too alive might wake something. Or worse, remind you that someone else isn't. You start counting absurd things, how many times they laughed during a single sitcom season. How many shoes they owned but rarely wore. How many spoons are now untouched. There's a thin line between honoring someone and turning them into a checklist. And this is where it gets strange. The space you share with their memory starts to feel more real than any conversation you had with them in those last weeks. Words are slippery when you're grieving. You think of that academic debate, is it better to forget the pain and keep the person idealized, or remember them fully, flaws and all, even if it complicates the goodbye? There's no right answer. Just like there was no right answer for Ludwig van Beethoven when he composed his final string quartet. He wrote it while almost completely deaf. Imagine that, writing music you can't even hear, for people who might never understand it. That's what grief is. It's writing music in silence, hoping someone out there will feel it. You look around. Everything's still where you left it, but it all feels different now. As if each object has learned how to sigh. And you're just trying to learn how to listen. You check the time, and for once, it feels personal. Not because you're late for anything, but because it just doesn't feel right. The numbers glow at you like they're judging. You remember when 9:17 a.m. used to mean something. A routine, a meeting, a coffee with them. Now it just floats disconnected from any purpose. The clock ticks, but your heart skips a beat. You wonder, did they feel this too, near the end? Did time slow down for them the way it's dragging for you now? It starts with small things. The "did I call them back that day?" questions. Did I tell them I was proud? Then the tougher ones. Did I say goodbye, or just drift away, assuming there'd be a next time? You retrace steps like a detective with no suspects, revisiting texts, voice notes, blurry pictures. Grief turns you into an archivist of a life you weren't ready to file away. In 1969, the Apollo 11 astronauts left a mirror on the moon so scientists could bounce lasers off it and measure Earth's distance. It's still there, catching light, reflecting truth. But you can't help but think, if you could bounce a message back in time, what would you say? And would it matter? The real heartbreak isn't what was said, it's what was assumed. That they knew. That there would be another chance. That love unspoken still counts. Here's where the academic argument stumbles in like a curious cat. Can regret exist without agency? If you didn't know it would be the last time, can you still be at fault? Philosophers wrestle with this, whether guilt is earned or inherited. You, though, are too tired to debate it. You just feel it, heavy as a wet coat. Sometimes it sneaks up in the middle of a laugh. A joke you know they'd love. You reach for your phone instinctively, then freeze. The moment collapses in your hand. You are laughing with a ghost. And the ghost doesn't talk, but it listens. You remember an article you once read about how Queen Victoria, after Prince Albert died, insisted that his clothes be laid out every day for 40 years. 40 years. Her staff would polish his boots, brush his coat, and prepare his shaving tools. It wasn't delusion. It was devotion. That kind of ritual makes more sense to you now. Because sometimes you want to do something, anything to fill the silence with meaning. Even if it's just setting their mug out like they'll be back from the store any minute. And the clock? It keeps ticking. It doesn't care what you've lost. It just marches on. And so do you, even if you don't realize it yet. Even if the only sign of movement is a tear you didn't notice falling, a heartbeat that won't let you quit. You missed the moment it ended. But you're living the moment it begins again. You're walking now. No real destination. Just motion. The sidewalk feels different under your feet, as if it's thinner, like grief has made the ground less reliable. People pass you by, talking, laughing, scrolling, living. It's surreal. Like watching a movie while your own soundtrack has been turned down. You wonder, how can the world still spin so normally? And then it hits you. You're part of it, too. Still walking, still breathing, still blinking at the sun like it hasn't betrayed you with its brightness. You pass a flower shop. There's a sign out front, * bloom where you're planted. * you smile. Or grimace. Hard to tell the difference these days. Grief makes everything ambiguous, even your own face in the mirror. You pause at a bench. It's warm. The sun has been generous. You sit. Next to you, a little girl offers her pigeon crumbs. She looks at you and grins like you've shared something beautiful. You smile back. For the first time, it feels less like betrayal and more like permission. That's when the strangest thought appears, * what if they're still here, not in body, but in echo? * you think about how the brain doesn't truly distinguish between imagining and remembering. Neurologists call it mental time travel. Maybe that's why your memories feel so real, because in some corner of your mind, they still exist. During World War II, soldiers would write letters they never intended to send just to stay sane. One British pilot wrote, "If you're reading this, I'm already gone. But I promise I left a piece of myself in the sky." That line circles your thoughts. It feels personal. You imagine your person saying something similar. Maybe they have. There's a philosophy seminar you vaguely recall from college. Is mortality truly the end, or just a change in form? Some thinkers argue that energy, emotional, spiritual, or physical, doesn't disappear. It just reshapes. Like how a star's death gives birth to galaxies. Like how grief can, in time, turn into compassion. But that doesn't mean you're ready to let go. It means you're learning to hold on differently. You close your eyes and picture them. Not in a grand cinematic moment, just something simple. Sitting across from you at breakfast. Reaching for the sugar, making that tiny joke about how sweet things find each other. You hear the laugh again. Not clearly, but close enough. It loops like background music, comforting, familiar, incomplete. Suddenly, the air changes. Not colder, not warmer. Just softer. You don't know what that means. But for the first time, you don't feel completely alone. You realize now that this isn't a story about endings. It's about translation. The way love shifts languages once the voice is gone. You're still listening, you just have to use different ears. As you stand and begin walking again, the cracks in the sidewalk don't look like breaks anymore. They look like veins. Signs of life. Evidence that even concrete remembers pressure and heals in strange, silent ways. You're back home now. Keys on the counter. Shoes left half kicked by the door. You don't bother turning on the overhead light, The soft afternoon glow coming through the window is enough. Dust particles swirl like stars, quiet, unnoticed, suspended. And in this soft light, everything feels gentle. There's a note taped to the fridge. They're handwriting. You've seen it 100 times, but today, it draws your breath. You trace the letters like they're braille for the soul. It says, asterisk, don't forget milk, eggs, love you. Asterisk, you think about how 3 words can survive someone. You sit. Not out of exhaustion, but out of need. As if the chair were waiting for you. As if the room knew you had something to hear. You're not afraid of death anymore, not in the same way. It's lost some of its sharpness. You've seen its face, touched the silence it leaves behind. And instead of feeling empty, you feel expanded. Like something opened. In the 1800s, the poet Emily Dickinson wrote over 1,800 poems, most unpublished during her lifetime. One of her most haunting lines reads, asterisk, I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. Asterisk, it hits different now. You imagine her writing that in a quiet room like this. Maybe surrounded by the same kind of stillness. There's an argument among scientists whether near-death experiences are spiritual glimpses or just the brain's way of cushioning the fall. But maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe it's not about what's real or not. Maybe it's about what brings peace. Your phone buzzes. A friend checking in. You don't reply right away. Not out of avoidance. You're just listening. Not to anything outside. But to the conversation happening inside you, the one that's been slowly forming. The voice in your head doesn't sound like them anymore. It sounds like you. But wiser. Gentler. Shaped by their love, molded by the ache. It's like you've become a continuation, not a replacement. You are the echo. And echoes never really disappear, they just stretch. There's one last quirky fact you remember from a documentary: sea turtles can cry. Not because they're sad, but to expel salt. Still, the image sticks with you. A creature weeping to survive. You feel that in your bones. You realize now, the real moment you knew it was over wasn't when they left. It was when you stopped resisting the truth of their absence. And in that space, something else moved in stillness: memory, meaning. Outside, a breeze nudges the curtain. It flutters like a wave. You wave back. Not literally, but in your mind. A silent thank you. You breathe deeply, and the room feels lighter. Not because grief is gone, but because you've made room for it. Given it a seat at the table. There's no crescendo, no big revelation. Just this: you made it to the other side. Changed. Softer. And somehow, more alive. You did it. You stayed with yourself through every silence, through every echo that never answered. The journey didn't promise clarity, and yet, here you are, no longer searching for what was lost, but listening to what remains. And it speaks softly, doesn't it? In the creak of the floorboards. The warmth of light on your hands. In the way your breath doesn't catch as much as it used to. Death may have closed one chapter, but love keeps scribbling in the margins. So, take this moment. Breathe. Let your eyes wander. There's nothing to fix right now. Just be still, and let the world wrap around you like a blanket. And when you're ready, say thank you to them, to yourself, to the moment that made you realize, it's never really over. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video. Have a great day.